Okay.
Thank you. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with you this evening. And this is actually my second visit to this event, so I'm glad to be back. It's always wonderful to be able to tour the country and meet with independent inventors and learn about their stories, their successes, sometimes their failures. But ultimately, what we do with the TV show, with Inventors Digest magazine, with Edison Nation, is really try to provide opportunities, because that's what independent inventors are looking for. They're looking for the opportunity to get their product in the hands of people who can actually do something with it. And so I apologize, we're working on the slide presentation here. Maybe if you could advance the next slide. My story is really that of an entrepreneur and an inventor. I started my first business in my fraternity room when I was in college. I played lacrosse. We didn't have a local supplier of equipment, and I took Econ 101 that semester, and I learned about supply and demand. And that is when there is demand for a product or service, and no one's filling that demand, there's a business opportunity, and that's what we're looking for. And so out of my fraternity room, I started selling equipment and apparel, and by the time I graduated from college, I had the 25th largest screen printing company in the United States. I had over 150 employees and 80,000 square feet of manufacturing space. So it was a really interesting lesson in what it takes to take an idea and turn it into a business. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a firm called Inventus. And what our firm does is we work with companies, also entrepreneurs, to take ideas and help develop those ideas. We have a staff of over 63 industrial designers, engineers, brand and marketing experts to figure out how to turn great ideas into great products. And so we work primarily in consumer products. That's our sweet spot. But we do a lot of surgical devices and orthopedic products. We do a lot of work in a variety of different industries with a very kind of similarity. And that is, for the most part, we're working with small, mid-sized, large Fortune 500 companies. But what we also recognized is that we came across a lot of people with great ideas. Can you do the next slide, please? We publish Inventors Digest magazine. It's been around for 26 years. I don't know how many of you are subscribers to Inventors Digest magazine, but I like to kid that it's the largest charity that I give to every single year. If you thought the publishing business was bad, the inventors publishing business is even worse. And even though Inventors Digest loses over $100,000 a year, it's my personal investment in this community, because I believe that the inventor community needs a publication. It needs a publication that shares stories. Some of those stories are success stories. Some of those stories are failures. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all about education and inspiration. How do you help people along this journey? We also produce a TV show for PBS called Everyday Edisons. And this TV show really came to us from your stories. We would have people come to us all the time at Inventus saying, I've got this great idea, but I don't know what to do with it. And I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the financial resources or the understanding of how to take my idea and get it to market. Many of these people didn't have the financial resources. So in 2007, we produced the first season of Everyday Edisons. It aired on PBS. We've won 2 Emmys for the show. And the show each week shows the process of innovation. How do you go from that sketch on a napkin through the design, the engineering, the prototyping, the branding, the packaging, the manufacturing, and then ultimately, we celebrate when the inventor sees their product in Walmart or Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond, or airs on QVC, or is in the Sky Mall catalog. We show all the different channels of distribution that our product may take. And along the way, we also show the stories of other successful inventors and entrepreneurs. Stories like James Dyson and his 5,127 prototypes. James, of course, made the vacuum cleaner with the ball that was referenced earlier. But James told us the wonderful story about where his idea came from and the journey that he went over 10 years to get his idea to the store shelves. And then, of course, being on PBS also has its own perks. We may not be able to hang out with the Kardashians, but Barney's a good second choice. I'm not sure which one's worse, right? We've had some wonderful success stories over the seasons. In season 1, Jen Holloway came to us with a stool and a piece of foam and said, I want to create a fitness device. And so we took that concept and through a lot of design, a lot of engineering work, created a product called Workout 180, which is now on The Biggest Loser. In the second season of Everyday Edisons, we had Michael Deep, who came to us with this prototype, a 2x4 covered in sandpaper and carpeting. Doesn't look much like a product, but our team was able to turn it into a product called Emery Cat. And the Emery Cat is sold in over 35,000 stores. It's close to $100 million in revenue. Not bad for a guy who only brought an idea. And then last season, Will and Rick came to us with a wet washcloth. They told me that if you throw a wet washcloth in the dryer with your clothes, it helps get the wrinkles out. It helps take out some of the odor. But a wet washcloth isn't very marketable, is it? So we had to turn it into something we could actually sell and package. And so Mr. Steamy became that product. Season 4 is currently in production. It'll air in March of next year. And we've got 10 more inventors that we're really excited to get their products on the store shelves. But when we talk about ideas, and ideas are relatively easy to come up with, the show only can develop 10 products per season. So 2 years ago, we launched an online community called Edison Nation. And what we do at Edison Nation is we partner your great ideas with companies who are starving for good ideas. Whether it's companies like Procter & Gamble, or Colgate, or Mattel, or Fisher-Price, or retailers like Bed Bath & Beyond, PetSmart, QVC, etc. We go out and we find these great ideas, we bring those ideas to those companies, and any revenue we generate off of that, we split 50-50. So we invest our capital to file the patents. We invest our capital to build the prototypes, to do the engineering. We assume all the financial risk. You just supply us with the great idea. So we all have great ideas, right? Ideas by themselves aren't very valuable. Everyone in this room probably has a great idea, probably have multiple great ideas. But ideas by themselves are just ideas. Ideas are relatively inexpensive to come up with. It's all about the execution. It's about taking that great idea and turning it into a successful product. So how do you get from that great idea, that eureka moment that you had in the shower this morning, and turn it into a successful product that you can give to Diane and get it on QVC? Well, it's all about execution. You've got to turn that great idea into something that's marketable. Because QVC doesn't buy ideas, Walmart doesn't buy ideas, people don't buy ideas, they buy products. So you've got to be able to turn that idea into something that is tangible, something that can be manufactured, something that can be distributed. That's how you earn money from your ideas. Now the process of turning a great idea is difficult, right? The ideas are easy to come up with, but the execution is really where you make your money. So along the way, what you're really hoping for is that you've got this great idea, you partner with the right people, and along the way, maybe have a little bit of luck on your side. So why is it so important today? Why is it so important to have great ideas? Well, innovation is pretty important. In fact, if you read any magazine, newspaper, or listen to the president speak, everyone is talking about innovation. It's the buzzword of this decade. And the reason why it's so important is because when you look at consumer products, nearly 50% of the revenue that consumer product companies are generating is coming from products that are less than 2 years old. Think about it. That's pretty amazing. The pipeline of new product ideas that need to be generated just to stay current. When we were younger, we bought established brands. We bought the brands that our parents bought because it was a promise. It was a promise of quality and consistency. We knew if we bought it, it would work. But today that's changed. QVC lets you send stuff back in 30 days, right? If you buy something at Walmart and you're not satisfied with it, what are you going to do? You're going to return it. So what these retailers have done is they've leveled the playing field. They've made it easier for an entrepreneur, a small business, a startup to compete with the most established brands because there's no risk anymore. You don't buy established brands because you're afraid it's not going to work. You're willing to try something that's more innovative because you know if it doesn't meet expectations, you return it. How many people have heard of Vizio? If I asked you that question 10 years ago, not a hand would be raised because 10 years ago they didn't exist. Today they're the largest manufacturer of flat screen TVs in the world. How did they get their start? They launched their product at Costco. Most generous return policy of any retailer. So now you walk into Costco and you see Panasonic, Sony, Toshiba, well-respected brands, and then you see Vizio, which looked pretty cool, had a lot of features to it, was priced right. They weren't afraid to buy the product because they knew they could always return it. And through innovation, they took market share, billions of dollars worth of market share away from the most established brands. So that's where innovation really becomes critical because companies need innovation. The biggest companies use innovation to keep in front of the competition. Anytime a brand starts taking their customers for granted, when they stop innovating, the clock starts ticking. It's just a matter of time before those companies die. They do. If they're not innovating, then customers have no reason to continue to buy that same brand. There's less brand loyalty today amongst consumers. Think about it yourself. Think about how many times you try something different because it's packed with new features, new innovations. It's the way that consumers are satisfied with their products. It's the way that manufacturers are able to continue to compete. Big companies, like I said, use innovation to stay in front of the competition. But conversely, if you're the number 2, the number 3, or you're an upstart entrepreneur, you use innovation to catch up with the leader, to take market share away from the established companies. And so innovation becomes very important in this whole process. But it's important not to underestimate execution. We can talk about all of these strategies, but if you don't follow through with the strategies, all it is theory. So when we talk about this whole process of being an entrepreneur, of being an inventor, it really comes down to risk and reward. It's a simple equation. There are risks of being an entrepreneur. There are risks to being an inventor. You're going to spend a lot of money, right? I see a lot of nodding heads. You've already spent money. There's no guarantees that you're going to be successful. You may end up causing damage to someone. You may be sued. You may inadvertently be infringing on someone else's patent. Those are all the real risks. And one of the biggest risks is you may fail. And that keeps a lot of people on the sidelines because they're afraid of failure. They're afraid that they're going to start a business or bring a product to market and it's not going to live up to expectations. And who wants to be that person who's known by all of his friends and family as the guy who filled up a garage with inventory and still has a garage full of inventory? It's not a really great story, right? But the reason we go through this is because there's rewards. Now, the most obvious of those rewards are profits. You can make a lot of money in this process. You can make a lot of money being an inventor. And you can get recognition. You may do it just because you want to see your product on the store shelf. But you've got to understand that there's no guarantees of success. Just because your family loves the product, just because your friends tell you it's a great product, doesn't mean the product is going to be successful. The product development process is expensive, and you're going to make an investment. And that investment may not just be dollars. That investment also includes time. And that's time taken away from something else that you could be doing. What you really need to focus on is the ROI, the return on investment. It doesn't matter how cheap it is, how little money you spend to invent. It's how much you make off of that investment. If I offered you something special tonight, okay? Everyone who comes up here and gives me $100, I'll give you $80 back. So line up right here. No takers, right? But it's only $100. It's not a lot. I'm guessing that you've spent a whole lot more than $100 on your inventions. But what if I told you that everyone who came up here with $100,000, I'd give them $300,000? How many people would come up here? Better be every single one of you. And even if you didn't have $100,000, you would get $100,000 because if you can demonstrate that you can generate an economic return off of your invention, you will have investors. If you can show you can make money, it doesn't matter how much you spend as long as you can generate a profit off of that investment. That's what you need to focus on. So this whole process really comes down to 5 simple questions. And I've tried to boil them down, make them very simple. Put your wallets away. Don't spend money. Answer these 5 questions first before you rush to your patent attorney, before you rush to build a prototype, before you rush to a factory to build your product. Not that all those aren't important, because they are. Those are all critical to your success. But before you do that, before you waste your time or their time, answer these questions. And the first question is, what is your product and what's unique about it? Now I'm going to tell you something. You may not like what I have to tell you, but it's the truth. All the ideas you have right now, every invention that you're thinking of right now, we don't need it. I said it. We don't need it. It's 2011. In over a month, it'll be 2012. And you know what? Society will continue to exist without your invention. Erase the word need from your vocabulary, because our basic core needs are met. They have been met. But tomorrow, consumers will want to buy. They will want to buy a product that makes their life easier. They will want to buy a product that makes life more enjoyable. They will want to buy a product that's more efficient than what they're using right now. There's a huge difference between needing something and wanting something. And what you've got to figure out is, why will a consumer want what you have? Because ultimately, what they're purchasing from you replaces something else that they were already going to buy. So you've got to figure out how you diversify, distinguish your product from what they're already buying. What is it going to be about your product that's going to set it apart from everything else? And sometimes it may just come down to, it's more convenient, or easier to use, more cost-effective, better design or styling. Maybe consumers just aspire to own it. But you've got to figure out how you're going to differentiate your product to make people want it. Does that make sense? So, second question you need to answer. Who is your customer? And please don't say everyone in the world. Because even if that was true, even if you thought you had a product that everyone in the world wanted, they couldn't all afford it, and you couldn't manufacture enough of it. You need to focus on who your perfect customer is. And when we talk about that perfect customer, how old are they? How much money do they make? Geographically, where are they located? What is their education? You need to paint a picture of your consumer. You need to know that the perfect consumer for your product is a male, 28 to 34 years old, has a college education, makes $65,000 to $100,000 a year, and lives in the Southeast. Because if you can define who your customer is, you can quantify your customer. You can pull census data and find out how many 28 to 34-year-old males with a college education living in the Southeast making $75,000 to $100,000 there are. Now you're not kind of putting your finger in the air and saying, well, there's 330 million people in the US, and if I could just get 1% of the US market, boy, I'm going to make a lot of money. Your market is not 330 million people. Your market is the 1.3 million males who are 28 to 34 living in the Southeast. So what percentage of that market do you need to get to be successful? That's the real math. You also need to figure out, number 3, is how are they going to react? How will your perfect customer respond to your product? Well, how do you find out whether or not your customer wants your product? It's not a trick question. You ask them. But if you don't know who your customer is, it's really hard to ask. Your friends and family tell you what a wonderful idea it is. But you've got to be talking to your customer. And so you need to find out from them what really generates that interest. You've got to determine whether or not that product is actually wanted. Is it something that they're going to want to purchase? You may find out that your customer isn't the one who makes that purchase. Maybe it's their spouse. Maybe it's their mother or father. So what's going to motivate them to make that purchase? You need to find out whether or not what's motivating the purchase decision. Is it something that they're buying because they're afraid they're going to need it? Or maybe it's something that they aspire to own. But you also need to find out where they want to buy it from. Is this something that they'd buy from your website? Is it a product that they'd buy from a catalog or an online retailer? Or do they expect to be able to go to their local mass merchant, their Walmart or Target, and purchase? And more importantly, once you find out where they're going to purchase it from, you got to find out how much they're willing to pay for it. Because you may be surprised. You may have a great invention. It may solve a real problem, but the consumer may not be willing to pay enough for you to generate a profit from that product. So here you've got this great product, everyone loves it, and then you realize that at the retail price it's sold for, people don't buy it because they don't see the value proposition. Whatever problem you're solving is not big enough of a problem to justify them spending $40 or $80 or even $20. So you need to find out what their reservation price is. What is they're willing to pay for it? And then also how often would they buy it? Because that helps you build the model. And that leads us to question number 4, and that is how much money do you need? And you answer this before you start. Inventing is a journey. If you were here in Denver and you wanted to get to the East Coast, to New York, and you had $100 in your pocket and a car outside, should you start? Well, you can start, right? $100 would get you pretty far, a couple hours, and then what would happen? Well, you do what every other entrepreneur does. You'd pull out your credit card and you'd start racking up dollars on your credit card to get you the rest of the way. But what if plans don't go as expected? What if your car breaks down or you got to stay overnight? What if you use up all your credit? Well, if you don't have enough money to get you to where you're going, not only are you not going to get to the destination, but you may not be able to get back. And that's what happens with inventors. They get all excited about the journey. They get excited about, well, I'll spend a little money to meet with a patent attorney. I'll spend a little money to build a prototype. They're using their personal savings. Maybe they're using their credit card. And then they realize, wow, this is a whole lot more money than I expected, and I don't have it. And if they can't borrow the money, if they can't get it from investors, what happens? They fail. And they lose all the money that they've invested. So what you really have to determine is how much do you need? And the way you do it is you build a startup budget, right? You identify the expenses that you're going to incur to file a patent, to build a prototype, to do the engineering, everything necessary to get you in the game. And then you've got to make a decision. Do you want to license the invention, in which case you don't have to operate a business, or are you going to be an entrepreneur and start a company, in which case you've got to put together what your costs are. You've got to build a pro forma income statement to figure out what your revenue is going to be, less your cost of goods sold, which will give you a gross profit. And then the cost of operating a business, your SG&A expenses that are going to be required to keep that business going. If the numbers don't add up, you shouldn't be doing it. And then finally, the 5th question you need to answer before you start is, where's this money going to come from? If you've identified that you need $100,000 or $1 million or anything in between, where's the money going to come from? Is it going to come from friends and family? Is it going to come from banks? Is it going to come from private equity investors? You've got to figure out where those dollars are going to come from, because you need to have that capital before you start that journey. But also understand that sometimes you can get creative. Sometimes it's not just about going to a bank or going to friends and family. It may be going to a manufacturer. Your manufacturer may like the product, be willing to give you extended terms on the manufacturing. So they produce it for you. They give you 90 or 120 days. That gives you ample time to sell it, collect from your customers, and then pay the vendor. Now, why would a vendor do that? They need business too. They want the manufacturing. Or sometimes you may find that a purchase order from a customer is a great asset, because you can take a purchase order from a reputable retailer and you can present that as collateral to borrow against, whether it be through a bank, through investors, or even a commercial factor. If the numbers don't add up, don't do it. It's not how much money you invest, it's how much you make off of that product. That's really the difference between success and failure. There's no statute of limitations on being an inventor. There's no age that we reach in the United States where the government says, you know what, sir, put down the prototype, you're just way too old to be doing this. What you've got to focus on is your best idea. I'm sure that some of you have lots and lots of ideas. Don't fall in love with any particular one. Focus on the one that has the greatest chance to earn you an economic return, because that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve. So the next steps, find the money. Make sure you've got the resources before you start the journey. That's really important. Secondly, protect your idea. The US patent system is an amazing tool to prevent others from making, using, or selling your invention. Work with a reputable patent attorney. Find someone that you trust, someone who understands how to protect your intellectual property and will be with you throughout that process. Then you need to go and build a prototype. You've got to be able to demonstrate how the invention works. Whether you're trying to raise money from investors, whether you're trying to sell it to a retailer or a manufacturer, you've got to figure out a way to demonstrate that product. And then finally, we're really having a fun time with this. You've got to make a decision. At some point, you've got to make the decision, do you want to sell your product, meaning start a business, manufacture, distribute, do the sales and marketing of a product, or do you want to just license the product? Turn it over to someone else who already has the infrastructure, the established brand, the relationships with retailers, and let them do the heavy lifting for you. Again, it's risk and reward, right? There's a lot more risk associated with starting your own business, but you make gross margin on every sale. Versus licensing your invention, you may make 3 to 7% royalties, but you don't have the inventory risk. You don't have that exposure. Understand, when you do this, you need to get traction. If you're going the entrepreneurial route, if you're making a product and you're trying to sell your product, don't walk to Walmart or Home Depot and expect them to buy your product right away. How many people have ever called on a major retailer before? It's tough, right? The buyers are young, overworked, stressed out, and in many cases don't even understand the category that they're purchasing for. If they buy a product from you, what they're really doing is not buying a product from somebody else. You've got to convince a buyer that the product they already have on the shelf, that's already generating revenue for them, will not sell as well as what you're selling. When was the last time you walked into a major retailer and the store shelves were empty? Or there was an empty space somewhere, besides Circuit City or one of the companies that doesn't exist anymore, right? Retailers already have their shelves full. They don't need to buy anything else. What they need to be convinced is buying your product instead of someone else's product. So they don't want to take a risk. You've got to prove to them that your product will sell better than what they're already buying. And the way you do that is you get traction. Start selling online. Put your product in various catalogs. Maybe launch it on QVC. Start to get the traction, the track record of showing that not only can you sell the product, but you can repeat sell your product. Because if you can demonstrate that success, big retailers will love to buy your product. They just don't want to be the first ones to launch it. The stakes are too high, especially when they have thousands of stores. The other option is to license your product, in which case you give up all that risk. You no longer have to worry about a warehouse full of product. You don't have to worry about whether or not there's going to be returns because you're collecting royalties on sales. And that may be a better option, but you've got to make that decision. And what we've tried to do in that decision is come up with new ways to provide licensing opportunities for companies and for individual inventors. We recognize that there's a lot of risks in this process. On the TV show, our bandwidth is 10 products a season. Not very big. 10 inventors will take all away and make their dreams come true. With Edison Nation, if we're running a search for Fisher-Price or Mattel or Procter & Gamble or Clorox or Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond, if you've got an invention that fits what they're looking for, that could be a great fit. But what if you've got a great surgical device? What if you've got a great product that I'm not looking for? Well, I need to find a way to be able to help you as well. And so we launched the $25 million Innovation Fund this year to find other opportunities for great product ideas. It's pretty simple. You submit your idea. You don't have to have a patent. You don't have to have a prototype. You just have to be able to demonstrate what that idea is. We invest our capital. You don't pay anything. We file the patents. We build the prototypes. We do the engineering. If we are successful in licensing that, and we invest about $250,000 per product. If we're successful in licensing your product, we're 50-50 partners. Dollar comes in, you get 50 cents, we get 50 cents. It's pretty transparent, very simple. It's just a way to help more inventors get their ideas to market. You supply the idea, we'll supply the execution. And so through Edisonation, we work with very reputable retailers and manufacturers. In fact, we just launched a search on SkyMall earlier this month, or last month I should say, looking for great SkyMall products. So if you don't want the inventory risk of putting your product in SkyMall, you can always submit your idea to Edisonation and we'll make the product and you'll collect royalties on that product. So we've learned some things in this process. We've had some great successes. Herb Hart, 82 years old, came to us with an idea for a product, a wrench, that takes 24 wrenches and reduces it down to 3. That product is launched into Home Depot. Phil Avery loves to bake. He doesn't like storing his baking pans. They take up a lot of space. So last season, we took this product, filed a number of patents on co-molding silicone to aluminum, and created a folding baking pan. That was just licensed to Pyrex and will launch next year. Frank Ramsey, 72-year-old retired executive from IBM, was frustrated when he threw something in his garbage can, the bag fell in. He took an X-Acto knife, cut slits in a black garbage can, pushed the bag through, cut his finger up, but he came up with a great idea. Brought it to us, we filed 4 patents on it, and now we license that technology to every manufacturer, Simple Human, KitchenAid, TestRite, Cuisinart, every company that has these stainless cans that have a liner on the inside, Franklin earns royalties on every single can. We had Matt Fleming, loves table tennis, doesn't have room in his apartment for a full-size table tennis table. We came up with a product called Monster Prong, and it was just licensed to Whammo. Brad and Melinda Shepard, love this one. They've got 2 little kids. They spend their whole day following them with a vacuum cleaner, constantly picking up Cheerios off the floor. They brought us this idea of a bowl that would keep snacks inside the bowl. This product launched this year. So far, I've already sold over 3.5 million units. Just got the Disney license for it. Next year, we'll probably sell over 10 million units. And then my favorite story of all, Betsy Kaufman. Biggest problem in Betsy's life is peeling the shell off of a hard-boiled egg. Must be nice if that's the biggest problem you have in life, right? So all she submitted to Edisonation, honestly, was, I hate peeling the shells off of hard-boiled eggs. That was her invention. Our team looked at it as a challenge and said, all right, we could figure out how to do it. And so you crack the egg into these little cups, you boil those in hot water, you twist them open and out pops a perfectly formed hard-boiled egg with no shell. You can put ingredients inside of it. Simple product. We have shipped 33 million little plastic eggies already in the last 3 months. Apparently a lot of people have the same problem. And then the last story that I want to share with you is one that just feels good, and that is the story of Mark Stark. Mark's childhood friend is an amputee. He has a hook. And there's a big difference between getting a hook and a $65,000 myoelectric prosthetic hand. Mark worked with our team to come up with a mechanical hand that would cost less than $100 to manufacture. It was named by Popular Science magazine in June of this year as the invention of the year, and we just licensed it to Hanger Orthopedic. So there's great stories that come out of this. It's really what I enjoy doing every single day, is going out there and hearing the stories of successful inventors, people who have great ideas, and providing a resource to help get those ideas to marketplace. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer questions. Any questions?
What was the motivation around starting the website and doing this fun?
The motivation behind starting the website was really about increasing our bandwidth. So again, we looked at 15,000 ideas for season 3 of the TV show. We chose 10. Didn't mean that idea number 11, 12, 13 were bad. Just meant the show only has room for 10. So what Edisonation, the website, allowed us to do was theoretically bring hundreds of inventions to market versus the 10 that we do on the TV show. Other questions? Back there.
Yeah, when, say somebody wanted to bring their first product to you guys to carry through, is it possible as a learning experience inventor to, I mean, is it out of our hands and out of sight, or can we learn along as you're developing it?
Okay, so the question is, if you submit an idea to the TV show or to Edisons, does that mean you're out of the process and in the dark, or can you play a role in it? And of course, we welcome the participation of the inventor, but it's not required. The inventor probably knows more about the invention than our staff does initially, and we want the inventor to be part of it, but at the same time, life takes up a lot of time. And so what we're willing to do is invest all that time and all those resources, so if the inventor doesn't have the time, we just do it ourselves. Yes?
What about submitting your idea online and confidentiality?
Sure. The only thing that we have in our business, quite honestly, is trust. That's what this is all about, is trust. Through the TV show, through the magazine, through PBS, the first time that we exploit an inventor, we're not in business any longer. So there has to be a certain amount of trust that the inventor has in us and vice versa. We've signed confidentiality agreements. We're not afraid of that because at the end of the day, it's a mutual success that we're looking for. The only way we profit is if you profit. We're taking all the risk. We're investing our capital. If we're not successful, and some of the products aren't, we have the regrets, not the inventor, because it was our dollars. In the back.
When your group takes an idea and then you file the patents and do all the work for the inventor, do you hold the patents, or does the inventor still hold the patents? Is it a joint deal?
Okay. The question was, when the inventor submits their idea and patents are filed, who actually owns the patents? Well, first off, the inventor is the inventor on the patent. So, of course, they're going to be the named inventor on the patents. But the inventor actually assigns the intellectual property rights to our team. And the reason they assign it to us is so we can prosecute that application through the patent office. Remember, we're paying all the fees on it, but more importantly, we'll go after the infringers. And what we have found time and time and time again is that infringers don't want to infringe against a nice PBS TV show. It just doesn't play well in the media, does it? We've got deep pockets, and we're willing to reach into our pockets to make sure that the intellectual property of our inventors is not exploited. We have shut down countless numbers of factories and distributors, knocking off EmeryCat and GyroBowl and everything else. Every trade show we go to, we find infringers, but we're able to stop them because, again, we're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that our inventors' intellectual property is protected.
How many submissions do you get every month?
It really just depends. It depends on the searches that we're running, how broad or narrow. Some of the searches we run are really, really focused. For example, one of the searches we did for Procter & Gamble was an innovative way of removing pet hair from upholstery that doesn't use adhesive rollers. That's really specific. Versus a search for Bed Bath & Beyond for back-to-school storage and organization devices is going to generate more submissions. From our standpoint, it's not really the quantity, it's the quality. Because there's not one winner. If we bring 53 ideas to Bed Bath & Beyond, they may choose 14. They may choose one. But there's not just one that comes out of the search and it's like, congratulations, you're the grand prize winner. We want to bring as many products as we can to the marketplace. We have an incentive to do so.
Follow-up there, do you go out to networking or the inventors for those 55 for Bed Bath & Beyond? You said they asked for a request. Do you do it in-house, or do you want people to bring you ideas?
Well, so the question was, do we go out and find those ideas?
Bed Bath & Beyond wanted to.
Right, so Bed Bath & Beyond says what they're looking for. We post it online at Edisons.
Okay.
It's free to join Edisons. You give your email address, and every time we launch a new search, and we launch a new search normally every week, you'll see it. We've got one going on with Sky Mall right now, As Seen on TV, Bondi for toys. There's a variety of searches going on right now. You submit it, we filter through based on manufacturability, commercial feasibility, patentability, narrow down the best ideas, take them to the company. They make the decision. It's not us saying, oh, we love this one. It's Procter & Gamble saying they love it, or Bed Bath & Beyond. Whichever ones they like, we negotiate a license, and then it's a 50-50 split. In the back.
Yeah, you talked about products that came that were really early in stages, like a 2x4 or a washcloth, or someone says they don't like to peel eggs. What about
There must be products that come that are much farther along and that are already even maybe being manufactured or real prototypes. Do you do different splits and percentages based on having to do less work?
So the question was, do we have different financial models for more work or less work? And the answer is no. We do the same deal regardless of whether it's a sketch on a napkin or a portfolio of issued patents and manufactured samples. We try to keep it really simple. Understand that we are not the only option out there. There may be better options. If you already have issued patents, manufactured samples, you may just need a sales rep. You may just need a manufacturer to go and distribute your product. What we're really doing is we're helping unleash the value in ideas. 11% of the working population are entrepreneurs. They're people like me who are willing to assume a great deal of risk for the sake of reward. But that means 89% of the working population in the US are risk averse. Doesn't mean they don't have great ideas, it just means when they have it, they're not going to do something with it. And that's what we really want to tap into.
Maybe one more question.
Okay? One last question. And feel free, if you have any other questions, hopefully you got my email address. I've got plenty of cards. Just shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to answer any of the questions that you've got, or you can see me afterwards.
So can you post an idea or submit it to you if it's not something you're searching for?
Yes. So the question was, can you post an idea, an invention, if we're not running a specific search? Earlier this year, we didn't have that ability. So if we're running a search for Fisher-Price looking for the next great diaper disposal device, and you've got a great surgical device, I didn't know how to interact with you because I didn't have someone looking for a surgical device. That's why we launched the $25 million Innovation Fund, because then I can evaluate that idea and determine, do I want to invest $250,000 of my dollars to develop it, and will I be successful in licensing it? So the answer is yes, we can look at any idea. Obviously, the stakes are a little higher there because we've got a much bigger investment if we don't know who's bringing us the idea, but we're open 24/7 to look at those great ideas. Thank you for your time this evening.